Please mute all microphones. We are live on Facebook.
Good evening, good evening. Good evening and welcome to the consultation meeting organized by the Ministry of Education. This is one in a series of meetings that the ministry is having to share with you their proposal on the introduction of parish primary schools. The purpose of this meeting is for the education officials to, number one, explain this exciting and innovative proposal. Number two, to listen and respond to questions from the public, from you. Number three, to obtain feedback, suggestions, observations, alternatives before a final decision is made. So this is but one of a series of consultations that will take place until mid-March this year, so that our education officials can hear from you, the public. It is exciting because the Ministry of Education is proposing structural changes to the educational system to enhance learning for all of our students, regardless of race, regardless of gender, or socioeconomic background. And a driving force behind this proposal is the desire to prepare all of our children to function, compete, and excel in the 21st century. Malcolm X once said, education is a passport to the future, but tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. And this is exactly what the education officials are doing on behalf of our children. So let me share with you the format for this evening's meeting. First, we will have greetings from the Minister of Education, the Honorable Diallo Raban, JPMP. He will be followed by a presentation by the Commissioner of Education, Mrs. Kelmar Richards. And after her presentation, after her first presentation, there will be questions and answers. This is where the public can engage, and we want to hear from the public. You may send your questions to www.menti.com. You may also call directly to CID-TV and send your questions there. We've received some questions, and those will be responded to by the education officials as well. Following the Q&A period, there will be a poll for us to respond to, and we invite you all to please respond. And then the commissioner will give a second presentation. Following Mrs. Richards' second presentation, there will be another Q&A period. Then we will briefly explain the consultation process, followed by the second poll, and then we will have closing remarks by our minister. And now I turn it over to the Honorable Diallo Raban, Minister of Education. Minister?
Thank you, Ms. Whalen, and thank you for that greeting. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this proposed introduction welcome to the proposed introduction of primary schools. Let me start by thanking you for taking your time out to attend this meeting. We know it's people have a lot of other things to do, but it is absolutely critical that we have these types of conversations with our public. As I stated on numerous occasions, the proposal that we're talking about tonight is just that, a proposal. This consultation process will be open, transparent, and fair, and we will listen, and we welcome your feedback and suggestions because those are critical to help us guide us to our final decisions. In this meeting, we will be laying out the proposal. We'll be giving you the rationale for it, and we'll be listening to your feedback. Again, I stress, this is just a proposal. The conversations that we have tonight and in subsequent meetings may come up with alternatives that we will want to consider before any final decisions are made. Tonight will be an opportunity for you to listen and an opportunity for you to ask questions. It is our hope that tonight we can present you with a vision, a bright vision for our primary schools, and answer any questions and concerns that you may have. We also want to hear from you in terms of what you think, what can be done different, or if you agree and why. It is critical that we have these constructive conversations. What we do know is that Bermuda's children deserve the best that public education can offer, the best in 21st century learning, the best in 21st century teaching, the best in 21st century tech facilities, and the best in 24th century technology. The time has come for us to be brave and bold and make the necessary changes across the board to bring about real reform to our education system. Strategic plans are necessary, but our aim is true reform that will bring a new and better approach to learning in our public schools in Bermuda. It is critical for all of us to have open minds and look at the proposed changes through a lens not heavily influenced by what we may fondly remember when we were in school. When we were in school and when we attended school so many years ago. Today's students are unique to today's environment. While there are some things about education that will never change, there are many things that must, should, and have to change if we are to have a system that is 21st century ready for our students. It is also key for you to understand that while we're here to discuss the proposal of the parish primary schools, we must always remember and view our conversations around this from the perspective of overall education reform. The proposal to introduce parish primary schools is but one pillar of the reform plans for the Bermuda public education system. We're working on 3 other pillars as we speak. The development of an education authority to oversee the governance of our school system. The implementation of the Learning First program to provide an avenue for improved delivery of education and professional development for our teachers. And of course, the phasing out of middle schools and the introduction of signature schools. When this government was elected, we were very specific that education is one of our key priorities. Education was a mandate from the public that we would work diligently to make public education the best it could be for our current and future students. We have to be prepared to discuss ideas such as the proposal we are speaking about tonight, a proposal that may well see the closure of some schools with long and proud histories that we will work to celebrate and preserve. Already from the feedback that we've received from these meetings, it is clear that a better mechanism to record and preserve the historical legacy of all of our primary schools is needed. The youngest school in our system is 46 years old. There are long and storied histories attached to all of our primary schools, and that needs to be preserved and celebrated, regardless of what the final decision is determined. Another important part of education reform is how we are approaching this reform. We are being deliberate and meaningful. It is necessary to ensure that we do this right. We do this with purpose, and this is done so that all stakeholders are going in the same direction. We are not at the point where we can give drop-dead dates for most of the changes that we are talking about. Conversations like the one we're having tonight will be used to shape future conversations until we are in a position to have a transition plan that is best for our students. However, we do commit to our students, our staff, our families, and the broader community that there will be appropriate notice and support for any changes that may occur, and a detailed phased transition plan once all proposals have been decided on. As the Commissioner will explain, we have developed a series of proposals for reshaping the public school system so that we can invest in and create the learning environments that will support each and every young person in reaching their highest potential. Learning environments that will support the teaching, learning, and the curriculum that will help students develop the skills, knowledge, values, and relationships so that they can survive and thrive in their island home for the decades to come. Your comments, your ideas are vital in helping us make the best possible decisions to creating a world-class education system here in Bermuda. Once again, thank you for giving up your time to help us and help Bermuda. I look forward to hearing all that you have to say tonight. Thank you, Ms. Whalen, and I'll just hand it back to you.
Thank you, Minister. Indeed, these are groundbreaking opportunities. And let me quickly welcome again everybody to this Devonshire Parish consultation meeting. We are excited about this, and what we want to do, I've already pointed out to you the order of the program, and just to also remind you that you may go to www.menti, that's MENTI.com, with your questions, or you may call to CITV. The telephone number there is 478-3301, 478-3301. And you have to also reference the code 8413678. The code is 8413678. And we're inviting your questions. We're inviting your comments. So please do participate. I've also indicated that there will be presentations by our commissioner. And so at this point, I would like to turn it over to our commissioner, Mrs. Kalmar Richards, who will make the first presentation.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Whalen. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining our consultation meeting. We must improve public education for our students, and we need all of you to join us in this effort because we all have a responsibility to make our schools better for our children. We must do better for our children by redesigning the public education system so that no matter what school a child attends, he or she experiences success as a student and ultimately as an adult. We have developed a proposal for how we can make our primary schools better. This evening, I will be sharing the proposals to introduce parish primary schools. If accepted, it will require all of us to work together, all of us to be prepared to make some tough decisions and to make the much needed change based on what is best for all of our children. Legislation will be introduced to change our system from a 3-tier to a 2-tier system as part of education reform. That legislation will result in 2 years being added to the primary school level and 1 year added to the senior level. We're excited because we will expand our curriculum offerings to come on par with the curriculum offerings of the best schools around the world. And we want to do that for our children. We also know that teaching and learning are at the heart of education. And we have a very powerful and compelling vision of learning, vision for learning to share with you. One that is personalized and one that is based on the gifts and the talents and the passions and interests of children. We cannot achieve the vision for learning without renovating and refurbishing existing buildings. Our current buildings are not able to accommodate the increase in students and staff at the primary level, the expanded curriculum offerings, and the type of teaching and learning experiences that our children need and deserve. We will also propose fewer primary schools, 1 per parish, with 2 in Pembroke. And we will do this because we want to ensure equity and better utilization of our resources. This evening, I will also be sharing for you our vision for parish primary schools, what parents and the surrounding community can do to help schools to become better. I will also share the factors that we consider to determine the 10 school locations which can be developed to achieve the vision for learning for our children. I'm just so excited about what the proposed changes would bring for education for our children and how these changes can have a positive impact on their future and future generations. Our children deserve the best that we can give to them, and we have to come together to make our schools the best for our children. Part 1 of the presentation tonight will involve sharing with you the reasons for change. Why are we changing? Why are we proposing what we are proposing? And what is this new vision for learning? And how will it benefit children? And so Dr. Simmons will share the vision for learning, and he will also walk you through some of the potential learning spaces for redesigned and refurbished schools. I will talk a bit about the improvement in the structure of the Bermuda public school system that will come about through legislation, share the vision and the concept of what we mean by a parish primary school and the benefits to our staff and our students and our parents, and then end the first part of the presentation by talking about why we believe we need fewer primary schools. So why are we changing? What's the reason? What's the driving force around the need to transform education for our students? Well, first of all, we know without a shadow of doubt that all children are truly capable. They are brilliant, they are talented, and they have gifts. But what we are finding is that not all children are excelling, and we do want to change that. We continue to hear from our school staff, from our parents, that the services and programs that are provided to our children are either inadequate or insufficient or just not meeting their needs. And so at this juncture, we're just not satisfied with the fact that we are not meeting the needs of each and every child who comes into the system. And we want to be positioned to do that. When we consider the academic results of our students and when we consider them, as a group, we recognize that they are not competing with their peers. They are lagging behind their peers locally as well as internationally. And we want to change that for our young people. We want them to be prepared to compete locally and globally now as well as in the future. Our school buildings are old, and when we consider the expanded curriculum that we want to offer in specialized rooms and specialized learning spaces, our old school buildings cannot accommodate that. When we consider this powerful vision we have for learning and what learning will look like in these learning spaces, our school buildings will not be able to accommodate that. In Plan 2022, there is a powerful statement made that is captured on behalf of our parents and community. And that statement is that the parents, our parents, and the community are demanding a transformed education system. And so we are responding to those demands from our parents and our community. The world has changed. And we need to change with it. We need to change how we are educating our children and come online with what is happening internationally. And lastly, we are aware that there are a notable number of individuals in the community who have a lack of confidence in public education. And we want to change that based on what we want to do for our young people. I'm going to invite Dr. Simmons, Director of Academics, to share with you a very powerful and compelling vision for learning, and then to walk you through what some of the learning spaces will look like as it relates to the vision, executing the vision for learning. So Dr. Simmons, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Richards, and good evening, everyone. As Mrs. Richards shared, we do have a powerful and compelling vision for learning for our children for the future. And let me just say, with the chart that you see in front of you, the series of titles or components or dimensions, what many people refer to them as competencies of 21st century education, our children, our teachers will be expected to go through these competencies. And at the forefront of those competencies and the vision of learning that we, or for learning that we have for our children, is that we want them to have a personalized learning experience. Very important. We want our children to have a teaching experience that has flexibility and that is adaptive. Of course, it must be future focused as well as inspiring, with the focus, of course, on Bermuda. One of the outstanding competencies that many people in the public have been asking for, and many of our teachers speak to, that our students need, is this issue of relevance, cultural relevance. Well, this will be a vision for learning and a curricula that is culturally relevant. But as it is culturally relevant, it will be also actively engaging. And we are confident and comfortable that the teaching and learning experience will pull out and draw out for our children, not just an entrepreneurial opportunity that focuses on consumerism, but also moves them toward ownership. And we want our children to think in terms of their educational experience as one of ownership. So these competencies will be very much a part of their learning experiences. I would also like to say that in this vision for learning, one thing that I would like people to understand is that as we speak to our cultural relevancies, yes, we want our children to value their past. We want them to recognize also what our current challenges are and what are the opportunities. I think earlier we heard about I think Ms. Whalen spoke to the quote of Malcolm X and spoke to the importance of preparation. Well, this will be a vision for learning that speaks about preparation. And how do we prepare our children for a future focus that is unknown? Well, we engage them in an exploratory learning experience. We expose them to learning that engages their minds, as we also engage them in an experiential learning experience. So as we go through this here, and I share with you these next 8 slides, you'll see and capture some of the vision for learning that we're talking about. First and foremost, we want our children to have not just the traditional 4 walls of education learning. No, they will be expected. Our teachers will be expected to engage our students in an outside classroom experience. Yes, it will involve things like the gardening and horticulture, agriculture, because our children must know how to produce and produce for themselves. And this also has linked to it a STEAM experience, science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics, where they will have the opportunity of developing what you see there, garden beds. Our children must have the full complement of what 21 Square Mile Island and beyond has to offer them. So this is getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of our comfort zone as adults and engaging our children with their what we call beginner's minds. They want to be stimulated. So we want stimulating learning opportunities and experiences, and the outside classroom contributes to that. But then we take them to the opportunity of a multi-purpose room. And this is even at the early childhood level. We want our children, you know, engaged in a multi-purpose room where they are very interactive in a childlike, play-like manner, but it also welcomes the adults to get down on the level of your children and see the window of the world through their lens, whether they are reading a book to them or you are engaging them in this open space of play and learning. That's what the multi-purpose room engenders here, and it welcomes their parents to be a part of this learning experience. As we go to the lower classroom, this is early childhood, a key developmental stage in age for many of our children, 0 to 8. So in this early childhood stage, you will see, and you can see by this depiction in front of you, there aren't any traditional desks and chairs. It's designed for the purpose of engaging our students and our children in this cooperative, collaborative learning environment, where they begin to understand what their individualized interests are, but understand it in the context of how it relates to their cooperative and group engagement. That's what this lower classroom produces for our children, excites and insights in our children a very collaborative and cooperative environment. One of my favorite rooms is the art room. Creativity. Creativity is one of those 21st century competencies in any education system of the 21st century. And the illustrative arts is very much a part of that. Even if you are not a confident and prominent artist in your illustrative art, but all of our children have some art in them. And while it may not come out in the illustrative, it may come out in the graphic. This is a room where our children would have the opportunity to engage their creative minds in an illustrative way, whether it's drawing with a pencil and pen or crayons, or using mobile devices to design certain artifacts. That's what this art room shall create. And so we want our teachers to be interactive with our children in this type of learning space and environment. As we go to the upper primary level, and we talk about the expression for our children in the amphitheater. And while it's not just for our upper primary level, it's for all children. But that is at the primary school level that we want our children beginning to understand performance, the importance of articulating, speaking, talking about what you do well. We want Bermudian children to have a sense of confidence about what they do. And environment does play a role in helping and assisting children with their confidence, with the adults who bring it out in them as strong coaches, as they are also seen as teachers. That's what we want. And this amphitheater is more than just a display of their artifacts. It's a display of their performance excellence. And that's how we must look at this here as we engage our children in this particular learning environment. But as they go to the upper primary classroom, which comes next, as you see, this is not a sit-down classroom for teachers. This is a very interactive, cooperative learning environment where now we begin to see the evidence of how much that individual interest is coming to the forefront and how that learning environment and the teacher pulls it out of that child, he or she, you know, the interest that they bring to a classroom. This is a cooperative, engaging environment. And you'll hear that language spoken often about it being cooperative and collaborative. But we want a strong individual that comes out of this here, understanding the values that we impart to them for their educational experience, and that they know the importance of education in their day-to-day lives. A favorite room, the 3D studio. Some may call this the fabrication laboratory or the lab. But this is very much a maker's room, a production room, We want our children to produce something. And when we talk about the evidence of what they have produced and we have assessed it, well, you'll hear something about project-based learning. When they create something, what is the value of it? Can they speak to you in terms of the mechanics of it, the engineering behind it, the science of it, the mathematics that went into creating it? Well, that's what a 3D studio entails. So they will be expected to make something, to produce something. All of our children must have a learning experience where they can say, this is what I produced. And if it's in the 3D studio or in the outdoor classroom, every Bermudian student, every Bermudian child will have the experience of having produced something. And then, of course, it's the outdoor recreational space. This isn't the recreational space that many of us grew up in. Although our children will have multi-purpose types of gymnasiums, but it's this outdoor space that engages our children in a very developmental, constructive type of outdoor engagement that is beyond just the recreational. This too is a learning environment. This isn't just a recess space. This is a learning space. And as we observe our children in the adventures of play, what are we taking in about their left brain, right brain learning experiences? And how do we transfer that to their vision for learning and excellence as we help to get them to shape their careers? So we're very excited and very confident about this vision for learning, given what the Bermudian public have been speaking about, because we didn't just flip a coin and said, this is what is. This comes out of already Bermudian people's statements. So in this vision for learning, I will end this by saying, we want our children to know and love Bermuda. We want them to believe in Bermuda and understand what matters to our country. But most important, we want our children to be proud to be Bermudians and understand Bermuda and their place in relation to the rest of the world. So we welcome your comments, your statements, your questions following the duration of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Simmons, for sharing the powerful vision for learning and what some of the learning spaces will look like have the potential to look like in our primary schools. I think one of the things that I would underscore for those who are online with us this evening is that when we consider the vision for learning and the learning spaces that are needed, we cannot prepare our children for the future in buildings that were built for an education system and jobs of the past. I'd like to share with everyone just the concept around a parish primary school. Dr. Simmons shared about the vision for learning, how our students will go outside of the building, outside of the walls of the building, into the community, the surrounding community, and across the island to see the relevance of their learning, to apply their learning. And the concept of the parish primary school aligns with our vision for learning. We know through the research that highly effective schools have high levels of parent involvement and high levels of community engagement. There is a growing body of research that makes it very clear that support from beyond the school gates is an essential part of preparing learners for the 21st century. So as we consider the concept of the parish primary school, I'd like for you to imagine one school per parish with all of the parents and the persons in the neighborhood, the persons in the community and the businesses in the community, all rallying together, channeling their energy and their efforts into helping their school in their parish to be successful. We envision the community partners augmenting and just becoming connected and integrated with the learning experiences and programs offered by the school. We envision the partners providing their professional expertise, workshops, and training for our staff, sharing their resources with our staff, with the students, and even with the parents. Well, some of you might say that takes place in our schools. What I would say in response to that is that that takes place on a sporadic basis in our schools. And so our schools, yes, they are very fortunate to have maybe a sponsor who gives a donation once per year, or someone from the community or a community partner coming into the school maybe once per term or once per month. Someone who's providing workshops for their teachers, maybe on a yearly basis. What we are envisioning and what we need to have take place based on the research is the community partners, the parents, and the whole parish becoming integrated into the operations of the school and the learning experiences of our students, setting up an infrastructure that clearly steps out how they can be involved on a continued and sustained basis. We see the communities taking ownership as well for the success of children. They will belong to them and they will invest in their success. Schools are expected to prepare students for a complex and rapidly changing world. They must teach them subject content. They're expected, our young people, to develop media literacy, to become critical thinkers, problem solvers, have excellent communication skills, be able to function as a member of a team. They're expected to help our children to know what it means to be civically responsible. When you think about all that is needed to prepare our children for their future, schools cannot do it alone. It will take a parish. And so that's our vision around the parish primary school concept. In my opening remarks, you heard me make reference to legislation. There will be legislative changes brought forward that will improve our structure for the Bermuda public school system. Now, that legislation will phase out middle schools. It will establish senior level signature schools with pathways. And I'm so excited when I think about the possibilities for our children and their signature, pathways. The legislation will establish a signature school for children with exceptionalities. And keep in mind that we're talking about our students who are currently at Dame. The legislation that is going to be brought forward will also establish an alternative education signature school that will cater to the needs of students who require having their behavior or social emotional needs addressed in a different setting than a regular signature school setting. That legislation will also change the system structure from a 3-tier system, primary, middle, and senior, to a 2-tier system, primary and senior signature school. And as a result, the primary schools will go from primary 1 to primary 8. Part of our vision also includes having preschools attached to primary schools, so that when a student enters the preschool level, the student will go from pre through primary without making any transition. It will be a seamless transition. And then the next time they transition will be for the senior signature school. Reducing the number of transitions will be of tremendous benefit to our children as well. The last portion of this presentation, this part of the presentation, will focus on why we need fewer primary schools. There are many questions around the why. Why do you want to go from 18 to 10? Why reduce? Well, we have to acknowledge the trend data. That data indicates there's a decreasing number of children enrolling in public schools. There's also a decrease in the birth rate. And so we're using that data, and there are projections made in the consultation document that show us that that trend will continue. We talked about the very powerful and compelling vision for learning and the expanded curricula that will be offered and the need for specialized rooms to be added to our schools. Our old facilities cannot support the new vision for learning. We need to have equity across all primary schools. If we reduce the number, we will be able to take our resources and use them, deploy them based on the demographics for each school. And when we consider our resources as well, if we use those resources for 10 schools rather than 18, we know that we can better distribute and better utilize the resources that are allocated. And those would be some of the reasons for why we need fewer primary schools. I'm going to turn it back to our moderator, Mrs. Whalen, at this time, so that she can take you through this next part of the consultation meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your presentation thus far, and Dr. Simmons. And thank you, Minister, for your greetings and your opening remarks, all very interesting. Let me just remind our audience, and we have our audience on several social media platforms. Many of you have joined us on Zoom, or you're on Facebook. Some of you may be watching on CITV or YouTube, or you're listening via phone. If you are joining us on Zoom and you wish to ask a question, we would love for you to turn your cameras on so that can help us to engage with you. We are pleased that you are here in this Devonshire consultation meeting on the proposed parish primary schools. And so thank you for joining us, and we look forward to engaging with you. As I had indicated earlier, if you wish to call CITV, you may do so. And that number is 478-3301 if you wish to log one of your questions or observations. And if you wish to put your questions or observations or comments on Menti, that's www.menti.com, please also go to the code, and the code is 8413678. So we are looking forward to your questions, and we definitely, that's the whole purpose of our consultation, is to hear from you. We have a few questions that came in earlier today through the registration. And so, Commissioner, I believe that perhaps you might wish to answer this question. If not, you will delegate as you see fit. And so let me just refer to that question now. There's a question with regard to placement of students. They haven't specifically said anything more, but they want to know about placement of students. Together with that question, they're also asking about the numbers of students per class. Commissioner, is that something that you wish to answer?
Yes, thank you so much, Mrs. Whalen, and thank you so much to our participant for the question. When I hear placement of student, I think what I would want to underscore for our participant and those who are online, and perhaps I'm going to take it from the angle of those who may have special needs. What I'm excited about with this, with the vision for learning and with the structural changes to the system, is that there will be additional options for children who require a different education setting. So there will be options in a regular ed setting, options in a school for exceptionalities, and options for the signature school for the alternative signature school. So there will be options in terms of student placement. As it relates to the number of students, when we consider the parish primary schools, we're looking at schools with up to 300 students and with a teacher to student ratio of 1 to 15.
Thank you, Commissioner. You must have seen what the other question was, because one question was about teacher allotment. So I think we've answered that. The next question has to do with school resources. And we thank the participant who sent these questions in. The question having to do with school resources and any upgrades. And then there's a question about curriculum. It isn't any more specific than that. I'm hazarding a guess that maybe they're asking whether or not there would be changes to the curriculum and what possible changes there would be.
Thank you, Mrs. Whalen, and thank you to the participant for the question. Dr. Simmons is actually can answer this, or will answer this question as he leads out with the work that is taking place with the curriculum.
Thank you. To place this in context of what's current right now, as you know, well, you may not know, we are currently engaged in dialogue with our consultants and team members about what our curricula could look like. And so we're at some conceptual stages right now. And I know the general public has a fixation on what we currently deliver in terms of core curricula with Cambridge. We're not fixated on Cambridge solely. Again, when you think in terms of the vision for learning that we just shared, you will notice with those competencies that we outline, it somewhat sets up a framework of a lot of concepts and themes. And if you have an idea of what a thematic curriculum looks like, we may take, for example, the a thematic theme of mathematics of we're going to chart a soccer pitch, a football pitch. You use that as an example, and using the soccer pitch as the theme, with it comes a whole lot of mathematical principles. And a teacher may be expected to deliver a lesson on geometry using that theme. So when we talk about what the curriculum will look like, right now we are engaged in some ideas, some ideation of what curricula could look like. And when I said it will have cultural relevance, of course, it will speak to the evidence of our children's cultural experiences in their day-to-day coexistence. And so conceptually, it can take on many forms, this particular curriculum, and it will involve and engage the participatory contributions of not just teachers in the classroom, but persons who will be invited in, and as we put it out there, invited to share their perspectives of what curricula for our children could be in different subject matter.
Thank you, Dr. Simmons. There's also a comment with respect to school resources and upgrades. Do you wish to comment on that?
Well, yeah, again, when you think in terms of in some of the framework that the commissioner laid out, and again, I go back to those competencies. We cannot enter into any new vision for learning without providing the adequate and proper resources. I think it was clearly articulated in terms of, technology plays a role in our 21st century education. And with it also means, if you're talking about resources in textbooks, yes, to some degree, but not textbooks solely. Not textbooks solely. What will be a teacher's depth of knowledge of his or her content? And where can we support that teacher in providing the adequate resources to engage our children's minds? And keep in mind, we said this isn't just teaching and learning and a vision for learning of the traditional four walls. How do we maximize the full complement of what Bermudian environment has to offer our children? Will they have a fully engaged science experience at Trunk Island? That should be something of an experience for all of our children. Will they have an engaging experience of the Blue Halo? That should be an experience for all of our children living here in Bermuda. So for them to have that experience and this vision for learning, we must and will provide the adequate resources to engage our children and advance their learning experiences.
Thank you, Dr. Simmons. Thank you very much, Mrs. Richards, for your responses to the questions that have been posed thus far. There is another question. I believe the minister referenced it earlier, but let's thank the participant for the question. And it has to do with the rationale for certain aspects of the proposal and the timeline for this process. Minister, are you there? I see the minister. Minister, did you hear me? Do I need to, should I repeat for you, sir?
Please repeat the question. I think I understand it, but please repeat it just so I'm sure.
Okay. The participant has asked about the rationale for certain aspects of the proposal, and they are wanting to know about the timeline for the process.
Thank you, Ms. Whalen, Heather Whalen. As I talked about in my opening comments, that is a question that we do get quite often during these, this being probably our 9th or 10th session. And people want to know the timelines, and I understand that because they want to be able to plan. They want to be able to see when this is. But we're approaching this process differently than how we've approached processes in the past. Whereas we're not coming out and saying, here are dates, and then we're trying to squeeze everything into that date. We have to have a system that is designed by Bermudians for Bermudians, and we have to give our system the time to develop into what it needs to be. When we answer the questions we're talking about tonight, which will lead into how we address further questions as we go along, we'll get to a point where we're able to say, okay, now let's look at what the overall transition plan will look like to go from where we are now to where we want to be. And then we will start developing what that transition plan looks like. We'll also start to develop the blueprints of what needs to happen within our schools, especially our primary schools, in terms of building and renovations and the like. And so the only concrete date that we do have now is that in September 2022, we will introduce 2 signature schools. That is the only concrete date we have there. After that point, we envision that there will be several years as we phase in the rest of this. Several years will need to transpire as we phase in the rest of this. But rest assured, there will be a detailed transition plan that everyone will be able to follow and everyone will be able to utilize to give an estimation of what the timeframes will look like going from there.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We want our participants, all of you on Zoom Land or Facebook or CITV, to please share with us. Share with us your comments. Share with us your thoughts. Please bring forth your questions. We want to hear from you.
Hello, Ms. Whalen.
Yes, Minister.
I was wondering, of course, being a techno guy, I've got all these screens up. So I'm looking at Facebook, I'm looking at YouTube, and I'm looking at the Zoom at the same time.
Okay.
I see there's a question that has come in Facebook, in YouTube, and the question is, and I'd like to answer it, why is there a decrease in public schooling? And it is a question that we have gotten previously. And what I do want to point out is the data that we have by our statisticians, and that's not out of our office, shows that Bermuda's birth rate has been declining since the 70s. And so we are producing less and less children. In fact, when you look at public school back in the mid 80s, we almost had about double the number of students we have now. Now, some persons also take that to mean that there's a flight to private school. So I saw this question and I wanted to quote some data. In 2010 to 2019, the enrollment in public school dropped by 16%. Between 2010 and 2019, the enrollment in private schools dropped by 12%. So there isn't a flight to private school as some people would think. There is an actual decrease in the number of children we have on island, and both private and public have seen this decrease in the last decade. Thank you, Ms. Whalen. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Minister. That is most helpful. There's one other question. It has to do with school locations. The participant is asking about school locations, and they have a second question about lesson plans. So we thank the participant for those two questions. Commissioner, do you wish
Mrs.
to?
Whalen, what are the actual questions, please?
Well, one question is asking about school locations. The participant hasn't been more specific, but they're asking about school locations. And the other question is about lesson plans.
And what was the question around lesson plans?
I am assuming that perhaps they are asking about how lesson plans may be developed or evaluated, or whether or not the lesson plans will be the same across all schools on that particular year level. They weren't more specific than that. We thank them for the question, but it wasn't more specific than that.
Well, let me thank you so much, Mrs. Whalen, and thank you to the participant. Let me start with the school locations. For the presentation part 2, I actually will be sharing about the proposed locations. Right now, what I would say, we're proposing 1 school per parish with 2 in the central parish. And during the second part of the presentation, I'm actually going to zoom down and talk about which schools have been recommended for each parish and why they were recommended. So I will share that with all of our participants. And then as it relates to lesson planning, at this juncture, we have teams who are working on pedagogy, they're working on the curriculum, they're working on a number of things as part of our Learning First program. And so as it relates to what will lesson planning look like in the future, the dialogue, the research, the conversation is taking place now, and it will involve input from educators, and it will also involve prototyping and testing as well. So I hope that helps our participant get some additional information around those 2 questions or topics: school locations and lesson planning.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. Now we have the opportunity to all persons who are online with us tonight to engage in the first poll. And I will invite our host, who has just put it up there for us. There's the poll, and I'll read it out. Do you agree with the introduction of parish primary schools with 1 primary school per parish and 2 in Pembroke? We invite you to pick one of those circles and then hit the bottom that says submit. And our data team is eagerly waiting for the responses from all of you who are online with us this evening. So do you agree with the introduction of parish primary schools with 1 primary school per parish and 2 in Pembroke? Please indicate. we've gotten a really good response. 81% have agreed with one primary school per parish. 6% say no, and not 13% say they're not sure. And so perhaps those people who make up the 13% are still waiting to hear more information, which nicely leads us to the next PowerPoint presentation, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mrs. Whalen. I want to share about the proposals for parish primary schools. So I'm going to drill down and share some specific information. I do want to underscore that this information is expanded in the consultation document. So I will share the factors used to decide which primary school locations should be refurbished or rebuilt. So how did we decide on the location? So that question will be answered. And then I will look at each parish and the proposal for each of the parishes with more than one primary school presently in place. So let's start off by reminding everyone that our vision for learning and what we want for Bermuda's children, we want to ensure that the teaching and the learning and the vision can be executed in a 21st century learning facility. And so when we considered the factors, what is it that we needed to think about when we consider the locations for the parish primary schools? So if you look to the left-hand side of your screen, you will see 4 broad areas listed: existing building conditions, land and property conditions, safety and health, and transportation. So under those 4 broad areas, there were some specific study factors that were looked at across all of the 18 schools by technical officers, by technical experts. The age of the building was factored in because age can determine the condition of the building, as well as the electrical and the plumbing conditions. The boundary and zoning restrictions were also considered because that has implications for the development and expansion of a particular site. When we talk about the vision for the parish primary school, and we want to rally the parents and those in the neighborhood and the organizations in that parish, we also looked at the surrounding community services. The roads and the proximity to the main roads, and whether there was what type of access would be, we considered the access given the additional students, the additional staff. Likewise, there was consideration to how close a school was on the bus route, whether there might be potential for traffic congestion as well. And then safety and accessibility were also considered, and we used the data from the score report for those study factors. The environmental building conditions were also considered because that would play a factor in terms of the expansion and capacity of that particular facility. And these last 2 study factors are extremely critical. Is there the potential for expansion? So you heard me talk about we need to, the proposal is to expand the curricular so that our students have more offerings at the primary level, coming on par with what schools around the world offer. That's going to require purpose-built, specialized classrooms for the delivery of instruction for those curricula. And so also, and then with the additional P7 and P8 being added on, the ability to, the expansion capacity is going to be very important. As it relates to the greenfield size, this is important as well, because after expansion takes place, is there the potential to have sufficient green space for recreational play for preschool, lower primary, upper primary, and a rigorous outdoors sports program? So these were the study factors that were used when we considered proposed school locations for the parish primary schools. So after the study factors were applied across all 18 schools and the scores were tallied, we're proposing 10 redesigned, refurbished, or we're proposing 1 newly built and 1 newly built parish primary school, 1 primary school per parish with 2 in Pembroke Parish, and we're proposing to continue with enrollment by zone. So currently we have our 18 schools spread across our parishes. And here's what it looks like with the proposed parish primary school proposals, 1 per parish and 2 in Pembroke Parish. So I'm going to work my way through the parishes and we'll do it by zone. When I do get to Devonshire, I'm going to when I get to the central parishes, I'll talk about Paget and Pembroke, but I will wait to talk about Devonshire Parish until I finish sharing about St. George's Parish. So I will spend a bit more time drilling down and giving some specifics around the proposal for Devonshire Parish once I work my way through to the St. George's Parish. So let's start with the Western Zone. In the Western Zone, we have Sands Parish, and Sands Parish currently has West End Primary and Somerset Primary School. Somerset Primary is the proposed parish school because it received the higher score of the 2. It has a larger available acreage. It has the capacity for development expansion and to accommodate up to 300 students and the additional staff. It has a large playing field, sufficient outdoor space, and Somerset Primary already has a preschool on its site. So we propose Somerset Primary as the parish school for Sands, and therefore we propose to close West End Primary. As we make our way to Southampton Parish, we have Heron Bay, as we make our way to the Southampton Parish, we have Heron Bay Primary, Port Royal Primary, and Delton E. Tucker. Now, Delton E. Tucker is the recommended parish primary school. It received the highest score out of the 3 school locations, and it outscored the other 2 primary school sites for land and property. It has the acreage for development, and it has the capacity for expansion to accommodate that vision for learning that we shared with you. And the Southampton preschool is adjacent to Delton E. Tucker. So we propose Delton E. Tucker as the primary school for Southampton, and we therefore propose to close Port Royal and Heron Bay Primary. Purvis is the only school in its parish, and so we will look to develop Purvis as a parish primary school. So let's move to the Central Zone, and we will start with Paget. In Paget, we have Paget Primary and we have Gilbert Institute. Paget Primary is the recommended parish primary school. Paget Primary scored almost double the weighted scores for land and property and conditions than Gilbert Institute. And for those of you who know the Paget Primary area and site, you will know that it has an extensive acreage behind the school that will allow for expansion and development. So therefore, we propose Paget Primary as the parish school for Paget, and we therefore propose to close Gilbert Institute. When we make our way over to Pembroke Parish, we are proposing 2 primary schools for Pembroke Parish. Victor Scott Victor Scott Primary and West Pembroke Primary are recommended as parish primary schools because they receive the highest scores. Both schools have acreage. Both schools have land potential for expansion. And Victor Scott already accommodates a preschool, and West Pembroke has the potential for a preschool. Northlands has land boundary restrictions and limited potential for expansion. Therefore, we propose West Pembroke and we propose Victor Scott as the parish primary schools for Pembroke, and we propose to close Northlands Primary School. As stated, I will come back to Devonshire and we'll talk more specifically about the proposal for Devonshire Parish. So when we move to the Eastern Zone, Francis Patton and Harrington Son are the only schools in their parish, their respective parishes, and we would propose to develop them as parish primary schools. And so we move to St. George's Parish. East End, St. David's, and St. George's Preparatory are the schools for St. George's Parish. East End is the recommended parish school location as it received the highest score, especially as it relates to land and property. Out of the 3 schools, East End's location has the highest potential for development, and particularly as it relates to the vision for learning. So we propose East End Primary as the parish school for St. George's Parish, and therefore we propose to close St. David's Primary and St. George's Preparatory School. So let's drill down and talk a bit more about the Devonshire proposal for Devonshire Parish. So the recommended parish primary school for Devonshire Parish is really part of a larger set of proposals to address the education and community need for our children. There's a need for an exceptionality signature school. There's a need for an alternative education signature school. So when we consider Devonshire Parish, we are proposing to construct a newly built primary school that can also accommodate a preschool. We are proposing to introduce an exceptionality signature school on the site of Prospect Primary, and we are proposing to introduce an alternative education signature school on the site of Elliott Primary. So we are looking at proposing a newly built parish primary school for Devonshire Parish. We're proposing to build it on the site of the K. Margaret Carter Center on Roberts Avenue. We also propose to introduce an exceptionality signature school on the site of Prospect Primary. We propose to repurpose Prospect so that it can become a signature school for exceptionalities for the children who attend Dame Marjorie Bean Hope Academy. And we always refer to it as Dame. We would also propose for that site to serve as the new location for the K. Margaret Carter Center, which is a government center that provides support and training for adults from 18 to over 50 years of age and who have learning and physical disabilities. We recognize that Bermuda does need a 21st century facility that's purpose-built to provide special ed programs and services to exceptional children, but we also need to consider those exceptional children when they become adults. Additionally, we want you to be aware that Dame's building is quite old. It has many problems, and it's just not large enough to really accommodate the students that it currently has, and it doesn't have the space really to accommodate the expanded programs and services that are needed. So we need an expanded space to provide the continuing education for students at Dame while they're students there and when they become adults. So therefore, we're proposing that Prospect become the site for the signature school for exceptionalities. And I do want to share that, the parents of Dame have indicated that, they're recommending the continuum of services and therapy for their children. We also want to share that Prospect Primary is located near Dame and the K. Margaret Carter Center. and that the site, prospect site, it's important for the signature schools for exceptionality to be centrally located, because many of the children who attend DAME have health needs and medical needs, and so it's important for the school to be located near the hospital. So we are proposing that Prospect is repurposed as a signature school for students with exceptionalities. And then we would like to introduce an alternative education signature school. So we propose to close Elliott Primary and repurpose it as the alternative education signature school to service children with social, emotional, and behavioral difficulties, children from across the island, and to also serve children who might just want a different and alternative education experience. And so we are proposing a single site that's centrally located that would be for children from across Bermuda, and that it would again be centrally located for accessibility, and that it would have expanded programs and services to offer our children. And we know it's very much needed. So in summary, we propose to construct a newly built primary school that can accommodate a preschool. We propose to introduce an exceptionality signature school on the site of Prospect Primary. We propose an alternative education signature school on the site of Elliott Primary. Therefore, we propose to close Prospect Primary and Elliott Primary schools. Before we move to the questions component of the second part of the presentation, I do want to underscore some things as it relates to the sites that and the locations that are being proposed for the parish primary schools. The facilities can be expanded and developed to accommodate the new vision. That is so critical. That was a critical study factor. Those sites and locations have the potential to accommodate up to 300 students plus the additional staff, and to also have a preschool on site. And with the expansion and development, still have lots of green space for recreational areas for students, as well as a robust outdoor sports program. So Mrs. Whalen, I'm going to turn it back to you so that you can take any comments or questions from our participants.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And you have explained the rationale with respect to how certain schools have been chosen or identified at least. And that was one of the questions, so we don't have to dwell on that. I can say to the participant, thank you for the question, and further details on the recommended, how the ministry has gone about deciding which parish primary school is being recommended. Those details can be found on page 41 onwards of the consultation document. And also, with respect to Devonshire, the consultation document speaks more extensively, and they can look in pages 49 to 51. We have, Commissioner and Dr. Simmons, some other questions, and let me go to those questions now. There's a question, someone has posted a question on Menti. Thank you very much for this question. And this is the question: how will the autism spectrum disorder or special programs, especially with students who currently integrate into the regular classroom, fit in the new grade school proposal? So that's a nice segue, because you were talking about the Dame Marjorie Bean School.
Thank you for the question. We appreciate it. As it relates to our ASD students who are currently in our primary schools, when we consider the vision for moving forward, we have, and I think I shared earlier, the more options that are available. So we would have the option of students being at a parish primary school. And when we consider the signature school for exceptionalities, and we would be looking at an age range that would start at lower primary and go right through up into, you know, our older students. So there's an option there. And then there's also the signature school, the alternative education signature school, which would be for students, again, from lower primary right through as well. And so there are options that will be available. And let me also say that as we determine, you know, what the schools will offer in terms of our ASD students, we will definitely use the current research, but we're going to create opportunities to hear from educators, to hear from parents as well, because we're going to, you know, co-create and bring our, you know, just bring our minds together with the research to determine what are the best options for all children, including ASD students. I hope that helped answer our participants' question.
Thank you, Commissioner. And that's a nice segue.
Add something to what the commission has spoken to there, because it's very
Certainly, Dr. Simmons, certainly.
Because to add to what the commissioner has spoken to, when we talk about that personalized learning, if there's any group, and like we said, all of our children will experience a personalized learning experience, but certainly for ASD students, their education warrants a personalized learning experience, because not one ASD student is the same. So when we talk about that personalized learning factored into it, IEPs and all of that, individualized education plans, well, there's a personalized learning plan that captures and speaks to, you know, some of those things Commissioner spoke to that will warrant all of the partners to help to shape what is in the best interest of that child's learning. And of course, that child will tell you too.
Thank you, Dr. Simmons, for expanding on that. I'm sure that that is most important to parents and teachers of students who fall into that category of ASD. And that's a nice segue to the next question that's been posted on Menti. And the next question is this: will there be a consultation similar to this one to engage our local special education community? Commissioner,
Thank you for the question. Is Kimberly, is our senior policy analyst online?
I saw her earlier.
So what I can say at this juncture, when we consider moving forward and making, you know, just coming together around what it is that we want for our children, there will be opportunities for input. The strategies around that certainly will be developed, and they will be communicated with our community at large.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mrs. Whalen, may I just add to that, please?
Please, Permanent Secretary, and welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I just want to draw the attention of our participants to page 50 in the consultation document. And it actually speaks to the fact in terms of for special services, particularly our students with special needs, that the parents of the Dame Marjorie B. and Hope Academy, they have actually recommended, you know, that we provide the services in conjunction with the Exceptionality Signature School. Also, I want to share that we do plan to have a meeting with the members of the K. Margaret Carter Center as well. That is also scheduled. And parents of students of every special needs child, they are invited to any of the public meetings to voice their concerns or questions. So just to encourage that, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Permanent Secretary. We have another question from Menti, and let me scroll down. This question is actually from Facebook. What will the focus of the two signature schools be? What will the focus be of the two signature schools? I know, Commissioner, you did talk about that. I don't know if there's anything else you wish to add.
Well, what I can do, and thank you again for the question, I can share that research is taking place, local research, and once that information is available, it will be shared. And we're excited about, the opportunity to share that with the community. So that will be coming, that will be forthcoming.
Thank you, Commissioner. Here's another question from Facebook. And the question is, apart from this vision and the person, and we thank them, they believe it's a great step forward. What is the plan? So here's their question. What is the plan to transform teachers' instructional styles to bring them on board with this plan? And their comment is, this would be the most instrumental, this would be most instrumental and most support and give teachers a lot of support. So should I repeat the question?
I think I have it. The question is around what is the plan to what is the, I talked about in my opening remarks that teaching and the learning, what takes place in the classroom is at the heart of education. And I think the question is, what are we going to do to transform what takes place in the classrooms? The Learning First program is in place, and we have teams who are looking at pedagogy. They're looking at curriculum and professional development, the development of the workforce. I just want our participant to ask the question, as well as those who are online, to understand that we recognize that the ongoing, well, first of all, the training and development of our workforce is critical to the success of the transformation. It's critical to changing what takes place in the classroom. It's going to be critical in terms of achieving the vision for learning. And so I just want to reassure everyone that there is, that program has started in terms of development, that plans are in place too and will be developed even further to sustain a professional learning, professional development program for our educators. So we can't, we can't just, get them ready for the transformed and this new vision of learning. Once we are executing, we have to ensure that it is ongoing, that it is sustained, and that the momentum continues. So thank you so much for that question.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have another question, and this question was posted on Facebook as well. And the question is, where can the data, the statistics of the SCORE report be found? They're asking where they can find the data of the SCORE report.
Now, I believe the SCORE report can be accessed on the ministry website, www.moed.bm.
Okay, thank you. There's a question from the Menti platform. Will the children be relocated during the proposed upgrades to the schools? The person, and we thank the participant for this question, the person is wondering if these upgrades will affect the flow of the school year.
I'm going to allow our minister to respond because that's one of our, what we call our transition questions.
As I articulated in the opening statement, and it is a question we get it's one of the questions we get most often, and the simple answer to that at this point is no, because once we get to the point where we have we've made the decisions on the direction that the schooling is going, we then have to come up with a transition plan, and it's very, very obvious to us that one of the reasons why we're approaching this in such a manner is because we know while we're transforming our education system, we have to continue teaching our children. We have to continue providing education. And so we have these two things going along parallel that at some point will join in the future. And so that is why it is absolutely critical for us to have a transition plan on how it would look on getting from where we are now to where we need to be. And so that transition plan also has to take into account what is best for our children, what is best for our system, because we cannot cause any disruption to their, we cannot cause as little disruption as possible to their learning scheme. And so while this is going on, we do expect that there will be students moved from one school to another while, for example, while a school is being renovated. There is no way that we can get around that. But we also look at, there are some opportunities for us to build on existing properties while a school is still open as well. And so once we get to the point where we made the critical decisions on things like the proposal we're talking about today, then we'll be in a better position to talk about how we go about that transition plan and those blueprint plans for our actual buildings. So at this point, it's a question that cannot be answered per se, but it is something that we have in our minds and how we move forward. And just before I end on that, Ms. Whalen, there is someone in the Zoom with their hand up. It's a William Grant has had their hand up for quite a bit. And so I just wanted to, I don't know if you saw that on your screen. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you very much. The data team did make me aware. Sorry, I accidentally muted myself. Thank you, Minister. The data team did make me aware, and we are at this point, if that person would like to indicate what their question is, we would be happy to hear them. Please.
Oh, good evening. I just unmuted myself. My name is Deshae Grant. I'm here with my husband, William Grant. As a parent of a child that goes to Elliott School, first, let me say thank you for this. I really appreciate this opportunity to give feedback. My question is, I just really wonder why couldn't Elliott be rebuilt as the Devonshire Parish School, and then in turn, the new build for Roberts Avenue can be used for the alternative. I just wonder why that wasn't offered as a suggestion.
Thank you for your question, Mrs. Deshae Grant. Minister or Commissioner, which of you is going to field that question?
So I can respond to the question, and I thank Mrs. Grant for what I consider to be an alternative, proposal. And we would really encourage you to use the form, send in the proposal, send in, step out the idea for us and the rationale. So we look forward to receiving that.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. We have another question, and this question has been posted on Facebook. The question is this: what will happen to teachers not included in the downsizing?
Mrs. Whalen, thank you so much for raising that, because I had intended to make some statements around the proposed changes, and I wanted everyone to understand we recognize that this is a very sensitive matter as it relates to the impact of the changes on students and parents, because some students would have to transfer to other schools. Some of them may have to, to travel far, a bit further. And so they would have to make some adjustments. As it relates to staff, what we wanted to just underscore is that staff roles are going to look differently. And, with the new vision for learning, there's also going to be an opportunity for new roles. So that's exciting for staff. But as it relates to what will happen with teachers/staff, we want to, at this point, just reassure everyone that the government and ministry is committed to undertaking a very fair, a very transparent process on how to best staff schools within the proposed new structure. And there will be opportunities for persons to give some input and, to share their views on what that process might have. So I hope that helps our participants.
Thank you, Commissioner. Here's another question. Will the Department of Education consider closing schools at the end of this school year if registration is extremely low?
That will be a question for the minister.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. The short answer to that question is there is no intention to close any schools this upcoming school year.
Thank you very much, Minister. I'm scrolling through all of the questions, and I believe that we have addressed all of the questions that have been sent to us through Facebook and through Menti website. And so once again, I want to thank all of the participants who have shared their thoughts and who have also posed their questions. Those of you who have not, but you have burning questions that you want to ask, please do go on to www.menti.com or send your questions on our Zoom chat so that we can direct those questions to the appropriate persons, and so that we hear you and we can also respond to your questions and to your concerns. And some of you may have suggestions as well. Okay, there is one person on the chat who's saying that their question was not addressed. They sent it on Menti. So let me have a quick look. I apologize if I've overlooked a question, and I will scan it now. I'm scanning Menti now just to see if I've missed a question. Sorry, go ahead.
Mrs. Whalen, if the participant is on Zoom, you can actually ask them to ask their question.
Thank you, Permanent Secretary.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Does the person wish to ask their question? This is coming from Lisa Trott. She's saying that, thank you, Lisa. She's saying that seeing that preschool will be added to the primary school, will preschools be mandatory rather than children coming at 5?
Thank you, Ms. Trott, for your question. We will be engaging and having conversations with educators and parents around that very question that you've asked. So just want to reassure you that the discussions will take place and there will be opportunities for parents and educators to have some input.
Thank you, Commissioner. Another question, what part did historical significance play in the decision-making process? We thank the person who posted that question on Menti, and let me repeat that question very quickly. What part did historical significance play in the decision-making process?
Mrs. Whalen, I want to thank the participant for the question, and I would just go back to the study factors that we used. And so historical significance was not one of the study factors. We considered the vision for learning. We considered what would be necessary to execute that vision for our children. And we used study factors that were aligned with the vision for learning. And I think that is stepped out in the consultation document. And if the data team can just give a page reference around that, I think that will be helpful as well.
And Ms. Whalen, Ms. Richards, if you don't mind me adding to that, we are very cognizant of the historical narratives around all of our primary schools, and we've pledged to put things in place to capture that historical narrative. What we have done is looked at our school buildings and selected the school buildings that are best, that we feel that are best to be redeveloped into 21st century learning institutions. Because we may have selected new buildings doesn't preclude us from doing things like renaming schools as necessary, naming classrooms or rooms within schools after significant educators. It doesn't preclude us taking the historical narratives of these schools, recording them, and ensuring that they are enshrined for all to see as we move forward. There are many of our historic schools in Bermuda that have changed locations on numerous occasions. That has not diminished the historical value that they bring. The clearest example that I have is the Berkeley Institute has been in 3 or 4 different locations during its term as an institution in Bermuda. That has not diminished the impact and the historical narrative around the Berkeley Institute whatsoever. And so this is something that we are very, very cognizant of, but we also have to understand that we are looking to do something that is in the best for our students as we move forward. Thank you, Ms. Whalen, and thank you, Ms. Richards, for allowing me to add.
Thanks, Minister.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mrs. Richards. We have another question. And this question says, Elliott is on prime property and should be considered as the site for the Devonshire school. There's ample space for a 2-stream school. So it's more of a comment coming from someone who posted it on Menti, and we certainly appreciate their views and their comments. Madam Commissioner, I don't know if you wish to expand on or address this comment in any way.
Yes, I want to thank our participant for making the recommendation. And again, I know we will capture it as part of this conversation, but I would just like to invite the individual who shared it to send in. This again is an alternative proposal for Devonshire Parish, for a component of the proposal for Devonshire Parish. So please also take some time to fill out one of the forms and send in your idea as it relates to Elliott Primary. So thank you so much for that.
Yes, thank you. Here's a question from Facebook. And the question is, are we moving away from inclusion? Thank you, participant, for this question.
Thank you again to the participant for the question. Are we moving away from inclusion? What we are moving towards is recognizing that every child, whether a child has any learning challenges or not, has exceptionalities, that every child has to have his or her needs met, and that we have a responsibility to do that. We're moving towards a vision that is continues to be inclusive, but which is expanded to accommodate the interests and the needs and the gifts and the passions and the interests of children. So we're going to even take things even further. So this is about looking at our children. Yes, there are children who bring special needs, but looking at what all children need and doing a better job of ensuring we meet those needs, doing a better job of setting those children up for success while they're in school, but also we're talking about wanting just a better quality of life overall for our children. And as our permanent secretary would say, and for the generations that are to come. That's what we're looking to do. So we're moving towards a vision that definitely continues to be inclusive, but personalized to better meet the needs of our children.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Well, we're getting more questions. So thank you to all of our participants. We have another question from the Menti website. And that question, will the school day or school academic calendar change? Will there be extended days or will it be year round? Thank you for the question, Madam Commissioner.
I'm excited to answer, and thank you for the question.
Yes.
So when we consider the vision going forward, and again, we're proposing, things that will benefit our children. So in terms of the school day, we envision a school day that is expanded. We envision opportunities for students to participate in very exciting and stimulating before school programs. We look at an academic day, the day that is actually executing the vision for learning that was shared. And then we foresee the day being extended where students are engaged in first class after school programs that are designed to tap into their talents, their interests, their strengths. So that's in terms of the school day. As it relates to the school calendar, again, we will, we've had some just brief discussions around that, but as we continue to look at and continue to determine what is best for children, and we continue to create opportunities for input from our community and from parents, that is a matter that will be addressed as well, whether the actual calendar will change, whether the school year will be longer, whether it be year round, etc. So there are some exciting possibilities for our young people.
Indeed there are, and I can tell by your enthusiasm, Commissioner, that you and your team, being led by the Permanent Secretary, you're looking at every avenue. So we thank you for that. Here's a question, and it harkens back to something else that was said with respect to historical significance. This question comes from the Mentee Post, and thank you so much for this question. With historical significance, will the history of these schools be included in the social studies curriculum to ensure that the history lives on? Is that a question for you, Dr. Liu?
Dr. Simmons is offline at the moment.
Okay.
He stepped off at the moment, and the minister I would like to defer to the minister.
Okay, thank you.
You know what? I actually think that's an excellent suggestion and something that we will take under advisement. Again, as the commissioner has pointed out, these suggestions. This is why we're asking people to send them in by the proposal form, because then we can accurately
Yes.
put them in categories and say, here are some of the things that will come. And I think it's a really, really good suggestion that is worthy of being explored. And I thank the user for that question. And in the chat, if they are online, everybody, I know we have the links to the various forms and stuff, and just pass that on for persons so they can go and enter that in, and we will definitely take that under advisement for sure. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you. And yes, to all of our viewers on whatever platform you are on, please go to the ministry's website, to the Parish Primary School Consultation. There are different forms there. To that website, you can enter your observations, your thoughts, some great ideas, and also that response to one of the mentees who's asking where they could submit ideas for that they have with respect to the proposal. So certainly send them to the Ministry of Education's website to do with Parish Primary School Consultation.
If I may ask a question, Mrs. Whalen.
Yes, please do. Please do, Mrs. Hartley.
What are we looking at if we don't make this change?
Oh, I think that's a question for the minister and the commissioner.
Yes, thank you so much, Mrs. Hartley, because as we consider what we've proposed and what we want for Bermuda's children, we want better. We have to improve what we're doing for our children. We're not satisfied with the outcomes. And so if we don't make the change, I want us to all reflect on this. If we're not prepared to make the change, to engage in education reform, to transform, to redesign, then we're not going to be addressing the long-standing national issues that have impacted the children. Our children are not going to get the high quality educational experience they deserve to prepare them for their futures. And really, if we don't make the change, it's really, I just think it's a price that's too high to pay, too high a price for our children to pay if we don't make the change.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I'd like to remind our participants that although some of your questions may not have been asked on this during this forum, during this virtual forum, please know that when you submit your questions, either through Menti or through Facebook, please know that every question will be responded to either by our permanent secretary, Madam Valerie Robinson James, or by the senior policy analyst, Kimberly McEwen. So your questions will not be ignored. So please do still send them in. And we thank all of you for all of the questions that you have posed,
Yes,
and the ones that we've had the opportunity to address. Madam Commissioner, is this the time for you to
our policy analyst is going to talk about how to get your feedback back in. And so about the process, consultation process, and, you know, sharing additional feedback. And someone talked about, you know, or asked, how do I get my suggestions in? So Senior Policy Analyst Kimberly McEwen will share a bit at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Whalen, as well as Mrs. Richards. So you've been explained many, many times in terms of how to submit forms, certainly in the chat and as well as on the website. But I'd like to take this opportunity just to reiterate that we are listening, collecting, and capturing all of the responses during the consultation process, whether it's in the Zoom chat, Facebook Live, YouTube, Menti, via email at consultation@moed.bm or via the consultation response form. The minister as well as support staff are consistently and continuously reviewing the consultation submissions as they come in, and we will continue to do so throughout the consultation process. At the end of the consultation, which concludes on March the 12th, the minister as well as support staff will review each and every comment and submission question, as well as all of the alternative proposals, including those related to Elliott Primary and other schools. We will also look at the consultation submissions and the alternatives from different perspectives. So for example, what's been submitted for a particular parish, what's been submitted for particular schools, what are parents saying, what are staff saying, et cetera. We'll also look at the responses and the submissions by theme. And this will help us to analyze it from different perspectives. So finally, I also wanted just to talk a little bit about the commitment that we have made to be transparent and to communicate the results and the outcome of the consultation process. So when the minister makes decisions and announces the decisions, he will also provide background information as well as the rationale for any decisions that are made. There have been some questions about the timeline for this process, including the decision-making process, and we absolutely expect that it will be concluded by the end of the current school year, although decisions may be made and announced before that. It really depends on the number and the complexity of the consultation submissions and how long it takes to give appropriate time to review those. So again, I wanted to thank everyone for their consultation submissions or the comments and the questions that they have made. There are many links in the chat in terms of how you can submit additional feedback or questions. And I believe also on the last slide, the consultation email address will also be up again. So thank you very much. And I'd like to turn it back to Mrs. Whalen.
Thank you very much, Mrs. McEwen. Thank you. I would like to just remind everyone, those of you who joined, that the Menti website will remain open for 24 hours. So you may have a question or two or a comment that's just bubbling beneath the surface and you want to shape and form it and formulate it. So please take your time, think about it, and then put it on the Menti website. And please know that it will be read, it will be analyzed, and you will get a response. either from the Senior Policy Analyst, Ms. McEwen, who you just heard from, or the Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Valerie Robinson James, or the Commissioner of Education, Mrs. Richards. We have one final poll question for you. And let me thank you again, because you have asked some really good questions. Yes. And so thank you so much for your engagement and your participation. That tells all of us that this is as important to you as it is to the ministry, because we're talking about our children. So thank you to our host, Ms. Darlene Hartley. She has posted the poll question, the second poll question, and it reads, were there enough opportunities to share views and ask questions during this meeting? That's one question. And the second question, how would you rate this meeting? And so we ask that you answer both of those questions and then hit the submit at the bottom of the poll question, please. And we ask because where there's room for improvement, that will be looked at and worked on. So please do answer our questions, those two poll questions. I believe we are receiving your responses. And we have the responses. The responses to the first question, that's very encouraging. 86% said yes, there were enough opportunities to share views and ask questions during the meeting. Thank you. And 14% are not sure, they're thinking about it. And that's good. That's good. Thank you. How would you rate this meeting? Excellent, good, needs improvement. And thank you for those people who say the meeting needs, this meeting needs improvement. Please suggest where and how these improvements can be made. We are open to your thoughts and your ideas, and we welcome them. And so we would appreciate hearing from you. Thank you so much for answering the poll questions. And thank you to our host for posting them. I want to say that time is almost over, but the process will continue because there are several more meetings to be had. And as our senior policy analyst indicated, these consultation meetings will continue until the middle of March. I know that there's been a lot of work that has gone on behind the scenes, even to get us to this point of having a consultation document that is based on research, that is based on statistics, and that is also inclusive of what the ministry has heard from the public, from you, the public. So we thank you. I want to especially thank the data team, Commissioner of Education, our Permanent Secretary, and of course, our Minister of Education, who is driving this and is so committed to this process and has a team that is equally as committed, because education is just that important for our children and for our island and our future. I would now like to turn it back to the minister, who is going to give closing comments. Minister?
Am I muted? Oh, I thought I was muted. Thank you, Ms. Whalen. Thank you, Ms. Richards. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Permanent Secretary. Thank you, Dr. Simmons. Thank you to data team, and most importantly, thank you. Also, I cannot forget Ms. Darlene Hartley and Ms. DeVito Morris that there as well. Thank you for the team that that really does make my job a lot easier than it is. But most importantly, I want to thank the parents for being engaged, coming out, having an open and honest discussion. I think out of this meeting, some really good suggestions have come about, some really insightful questions have been asked. And I think judging from the poll results, everyone is understanding of what it is that we're trying to do, but still has some reservations here or there, and need to know a bit more information. I'm glad that you did engage. I'm glad those persons on Facebook were very active. The persons on the MIDI board were very active, and the persons who did speak up and ask questions during the Zoom. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for being concerned and participating in the future of education for Bermuda. We are all very excited, as you can see as we speak. We see the possibilities. We see what our children can gain from making these types of decisions and the reform that is coming. We're excited. We want you to be excited, and we want you to be fully engaged and continue to be fully engaged with this process. A couple of housekeeping notes. There is the consultation form. I think the links have been posted in the various mediums. If you do not want to do the consultation form, there is the email address that you see on the screen now, consultation@moed.bm, to send in anything that you want to send in by email. I do encourage you to visit the Learning First website, www.learningfirstbda.com. Read about what's happening with that. There were questions that talked about teacher redevelopment, what learning will look like within the classroom, how it will be different. That website will have a wealth of information about that, and give you the opportunity to sign up for the various opportunities to assist us as we move forward with our education. So with that, I just want to again just say thank everyone on the call. Thank you for coming out. Please have a safe and wonderful rest of the week and weekend, and we look forward to seeing you again if you choose to join any of the additional meetings that we're having. Thank you, Ms. Whalen.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, everyone. Have a safe night. Goodbye.